There exists a type of person that when they cancel plans, they feel something that isn't disappointment at all. It's closer to relief. A quiet exhale, like they just narrowly avoided something harmful. And if you know that feeling, if you recognized yourself in those words, keep watching. Because it might surprise you what that actually means. Most people would assume that someone who never wants to leave the house is lazy. Maybe antisocial. Maybe depressed. Maybe they just need to get out more. As though sunlight and brunch are universal medicine. And look, sometimes those explanations contain a fragment of truth. It usually goes somewhere deeper than most people think to look. And that relief you feel when plans get cancelled. It is data. Because your brain, right now, is in the business of prediction. That is one of its primary jobs. Every time you do something and it goes well, your mind records it. Every time you do something and it goes badly, awkward, painful, exhausting, humiliating, overwhelming, it records that, too. And over time those records become expectations. This is where the house comes in. For some people, home stops being just a location. It becomes a confirmed safe outcome. The brain has enough evidence here. It knows the sounds. It knows the routines. It knows where the bathroom is. It knows where the charger is. It knows what the evening will probably feel like. Nothing surprising. Nothing socially expensive. Outside is different. Outside is unsorted. Unprocessed variables everywhere. Traffic delays other people's moods. Unexpected conversations crowds. Noise, the possibility of embarrassment. The possibility of disappointment. The possibility of simply feeling drained. And the brain begins to treat the front door the way many people treat uncertainty itself. Suspiciously. This is the avoidance loop. Behavioral psychologists have understood it for decades. Every time you avoid something stressful and the stress immediately drops, your nervous system learns something powerful, and often misleading. It learns, staying home saved me. That relief becomes reinforcement. So essentially, you are being trained to stay inside. The more effectively avoidance removes discomfort, the more likely you are to repeat it. The short-term calm teaches the brain that the danger outside must have been real, even when it wasn't, which means the person who cancels dinner plans, the person who ignores messages, the person who orders groceries because the supermarket feels like too much today is not necessarily weak-willed. Their brain is doing exactly what brains are built to do. Protect first. Question later. The problem is that protection can quietly become a prison. Now, there is a version of this that crosses into clinical territory. Agoraphobia. Severe panic or fear around leaving safe environments. That can be profoundly debilitating. But many people who never want to leave the house are not clinically agoraphobic at all. And this distinction matters because a huge number of people exist in the middle, not severely anxious, not simply introverted. Somewhere in a gray, quiet zone, where the outside world has started to feel optional, and staying in feels increasingly correct. Before we go further, some people genuinely love being home. No wound driving it. No pathology underneath it. Home is where certain people feel most alive. Most creative, most like themselves. The couch. The bookshelves. The kitchen at midnight. The silence. The freedom to exist without being perceived. That preference is not a flaw. Solitude is a real human need. Rest is a real human need. Wanting peace more than stimulation does not mean something is wrong with you. But I'm talking about the point where comfort curdles into confinement. Where you stay home not because you prefer it, but because leaving now feels strangely difficult. Even when part of you wants to go. Modern life has made that easier than ever. For most of human history, staying home came with immediate costs. You needed to go out for food, for work, for community, for survival. Now, delivery arrives at the door. Work happens on a laptop. Friendships happen through screens. Entertainment streams endlessly. Groceries appear with a few taps. One by one. The frictions that once pulled people back into the world have been removed. And for a brain already leaning towards safety, that matters. Because now avoidance can continue for a long time without obvious consequences. Until eventually, there are consequences. Japan gave the world one of the most discussed words for this far end of the spectrum, hikikomori. Roughly pulling inward. People withdrawing for months or years. Often from almost all social participation. Ansei thought culturally specific. Researchers have since found similar patterns across countries and cultures. Different details. Same shape. And the psychology is fascinating. These are not always people who stopped caring. Often they care too much. High sensitivity to judgment. Fear of negative evaluation. A humiliating event that changed how they see people. Bullying. Social rejection. Failure that felt final. A breakup that made closeness feel dangerous. Then something subtle happens. When you stop leaving, you stop collecting evidence that the outside world is manageable. The brain never gets updated information. It keeps running old predictions. The fear grows in the vacuum. Unchallenged, uncorrected, untested. And then there is shame. This part is brutal. If you've been home for 3 months, 6 months, a year, you know re-entering means questions. Where have you been? What happened? Are you okay? Why did you disappear? The gap itself becomes the barrier. The longer you stay away, the harder it feels to return. Some people describe social debt accumulating. Missed birthdays. Unanswered texts. Invitations ignored. Each one becoming another weight attached to the front door. So they stay inside longer, and people on the outside often misunderstand this completely. They think pressure will help. Tough love lectures. Shame. But the person who hasn't left the house in months already carries enormous shame. Adding more simply makes home feel safer by comparison. What helps is usually the opposite of pressure. Low-stakes connection. Gentle consistency. Someone texting without demanding replies. Someone inviting without guilt. Someone making re-entry feel ordinary, instead of dramatic. Because underneath all the terminology, the person in the house is still just human. Usually overwhelmed. Usually tired. Often afraid, and they found the one place where those feelings soften. The question is whether that place remains a refuge, or slowly becomes a cage. Now, there is another angle nobody talks about enough. Some people never want to leave the house because the house is the only place they control. Outside, other people set the volume, other people set the pace, other people interrupt, judge, demand, intrude, dominate attention. Inside, the thermostat is yours, the lighting is yours, the schedule is yours. The silence is yours. For someone whose nervous system is easily overloaded, control can feel like oxygen. This is why many highly sensitive people describe home not as laziness, but regulation. They are not hiding from life. They are recovering from stimulation. And yet, even recovery can become avoidance if it never ends. Rest should restore you back to life. It should not replace life entirely. So if this is something you recognize in yourself, the goal is not to become wildly extroverted overnight. It is not to force yourself into crowded bars and pretend you love it. It is not to shame yourself into being normal. The evidence-based path is smaller and kinder than that. Gradual exposure. Tiny repeatable contact with what your nervous system has labeled uncomfortable. Walk to the mailbox, then around the block. Then a short errand, then coffee with one person. Then leave before exhaustion hits. Not dramatic acts of willpower. New evidence. That's the real medicine. It needs to learn that discomfort is survivable, that awkward moments pass, that the outside world is not one giant hostile event waiting for you. The front door does not need to be conquered. It needs to become boring. And if you are watching because someone you love is disappearing inward, remember this. They may not need fixing as much as they need safety. They may not need speeches as much as they need patience. They may not need judgment at all. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is answer one message. Open one curtain. Step onto one porch. Walk one street. That progress can look laughably small from the outside. It rarely feels small on the inside. Because for the person whose world has shrunk, inches matter. Own a last thing, especially if some of this felt a little too familiar. Understanding the pattern is one thing, interrupting it is another entirely. Knowing why your brain does something does not automatically make it stop. But patterns built through repetition can be changed through repetition too. Slowly. Quietly. Without fanfare. And if this resonated, there are resources in the description and pinned comment. Nothing dramatic, nothing change your life tonight. Just small consistent steps that help your brain gather different evidence again. Because sometimes healing is not a revelation. Sometimes, it is just opening the door.